Each hemisphere of the body crosses over and controls the opposite side of the body. The passive side now controlling, in this example, the left side of the body becomes markedly, testably weaker. Okay? The other side now becomes excessively tense. It's almost like a mini stroke. For most people, the low back starts to tighten up, the hip elevates, one leg appears shorter than the other. As you sit there and you step down on the short side, the wisdom of the body wants your eyes to be even with the horizon, and now you start turning your neck or turning your body, and you end up...
be aware.
Yeah. And so what happens is a 25-year in-depth study at the University of Colorado in biomechanics says that for every half inch of leg shortness, there is between 3 and 9 spinal stress points. Okay? Whatever you want to call those stress points, it interferes with the life force energy flowing out into the body. Over time, that's going to develop a loss of function in those areas. You're going to have damage, decay, degeneration. Ultimately, you're going to have premature death. Remember, we talked about cancer, anywhere from 5 years to 30 years to develop. Heart disease, 43 years before you have a heart attack. That starts with this sequence, this downward spiral. Brain lateralizes in the dominant hemisphere, subdominant side becomes weaker. We have a selective weakness, excessive tension. We get a biomechanical imbalance in the body. About 90% of the time, the short leg side of the body, you're going to have tension in that shoulder and also in the neck as well from doing all those maneuvers to keep the eyes level with the horizon.
Right.
Now, if that was all that happened on the physical level, it would be bad enough. But what then happens is that as the brain lateralizes, we lock into a mid-level of brain function. It's called the limbic system. A two-time Nobel Prize laureate, Alexis Carrel, back in 1936, published his research. He found that, on average, a person thinks a negative thought every 3 minutes.
Yep.
Over 300 negative thoughts a day. Over 95% of our self-talk is negative. And he didn't know why. But that experiment has been duplicated in almost every university around the world, and it's borne out that over 95% of our self-talk is negative. And we didn't know why until about 15, 20 years ago, when we found that when you lock into that dominant hemisphere, slip into that middle level of brain function, you actually go to a part of the brain, it's called the locus coeruleus, and it's where the survival mechanism lives. It's where fight or flight lives. But it's also where all the no's, don'ts, can'ts, and negative experiences of childhood live. So it's like taking a pair of negative glasses and putting them on. And now instead of having a glass that was half full, it's half empty. Instead of being solution-oriented, you're problem-oriented. It's what is your focus? How do you see the world? You become much more negative. Now, all that's going on, so as you lock into that middle level of brain function, you don't have easy access to the neocortex. That's what makes us humans. That's our highest level of brain function. That gives us the highest degree of mental clarity and decision-making skills. This is why smart people do dumb things when they're stressed out.
Thank you.
It's because they're locked into a mid-level of brain function. Emotionally, we know that if we have physical tension in our body, we also have emotional tension. Okay? So we have physical tension, emotional tension. Who knows which one came first? They come hand in hand. So when you're in physical tension and pain, are you more or less tolerant of other people around you? Obviously, you're less tolerant. Job stress is at all times high. People leaving jobs, having job insecurity. Most people will leave a job rather than deal with a problem in their job. And it's a communication problem, but it's because they're in a negative space.
Right.
And they have emotions, and they're not at a high emotional management. So instead of dealing with their managers or co-workers, they just leave. It costs, on average, the International Labor Organization, which is a division of the World Health Organization, says that it costs the American business, American economy, over $300 billion a year.
Wow.
In excessive absenteeism, lost productivity, unwanted attrition, and increased medical claims and costs, workman's compensation, all of those things. And it all comes back down to, we started out and we got locked into this inappropriate stress state. They did some research that showed that in the early 1950s, the average person locked into this inappropriate stress state and stayed there by the time they were age 25.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, it was down to...
I see a lot of people like that.
Yeah. But in the 1960s, it was down to 18 or 19. In the 1970s, it was down to 11 or 12 years old. And now it's unusual to find a 5-year-old who isn't locked in that inappropriate stress state. And in fact, Boston University Hospital did a study that showed that 70% of apparently healthy babies, because of the trauma of the birth process, especially if forceps were used, are already locked in that inappropriate stress state. Now, Sloan Kettering did a backup study to that. They agreed with those findings, but they took it another step farther, and they said that by the time that the child, apparently healthy child now, is age 1, another 10% of them are locked in the inappropriate stress state.
Wow.
So, you know, we are born and we come into this life and we got this magic inside of us. I mean, each of us have this wonderful life force energy that gives us health and well-being and zest for life. And then we go out into the world and we start this downward spiral. We have all these changes and challenges and tests, and we get locked into this inappropriate stress state, and we never reach our full potential.
Mm-hmm.
And it's harder for us to be happy and joyful and experience life the way we were meant to, and whole brain function.
Right.
So now we're to the part, where does the disease really come from, right? As we get to that downward spiral, the body is being flooded with excessive hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, the stress hormone. Every system of the body has a balance. You know, we try and speed things up, we try and slow things down so that the body can stay in balance, in a state of homeostasis. And so in hormones with cortisol, at the opposite end of that axis is DHEA. They both have the same precursor. So if the body decides to make more cortisol, it has to make less DHEA. We know, and you know, that DHEA is anti-aging. It's life-enhancing. It's positive emotion. Cortisol is the opposite of that. It wears us down. It promotes negativity. And so what happens is that we're increasing the cortisol, we're decreasing the DHEA for a short period of time. That's fine, but not for weeks and months and years to be locked into that inappropriate stress state. So what happens is that lots of independent research out there, not that we've done, but the medical community has done, has shown that that imbalance is key to developing cancer, heart disease, obesity, Alzheimer's, immune system disorders, HIV-related diseases, hypertension, you name it.
Right.
It contributes to it.
So how does Alphabiotics fix that?
Okay.
Or attempt to fix it?
Okay. So what we found was that the body is an energetic system. Okay. So
like a battery.
Exactly. And Einstein, shortly before he died, made a really neat statement. He said that after years of thought, study, and contemplation, that he has found that there is only one thing in the universe, and that is energy. And above that is supreme intelligence. So what we do is we deal with the body in an energetic way. Okay? We use a hands-on process. It's as much about the physical movement. We're extending the head on each side. We're cradling it in our arms, and it's a quick extension. It's much like a martial arts movement. It's not about how hard we do it. It's about how fast. It's about speed and intention. And what it causes the brain to do is it causes the brain to reset itself, much like you reboot a computer. You know, when you're in it's a systems interrupt signal. The brain goes through, does a systems checks. Oh, there really is nothing that's threatening me out there. There is no high emotional content. There's no danger. It goes through, it does a systems check, and it comes back online. Immediately, within 1/1000th of a second, our research bears out that the weak muscles become stronger. The tense muscles relax. When that happens, the biomechanical imbalance that we had talked about automatically takes care of itself. Now, when we do that process, and the brain hemispheres integrate, not because we were trying to integrate the hemispheres, but because the wisdom of the body, the innate power and wisdom that made us, knows how to heal us if we get the stress out of the way, we get the noise out of the way. So we do this process to get the noise out of the way, and then the wisdom of the body, the innate power and wisdom, takes over.